You know, it's funny. Have you ever noticed how so many ghost stories, no matter how different they seem on the surface, just feel familiar? You've got a vengeful spirit in an old resort, a cursed doll in some family's home. Well, it turns out most hauntings actually follow a pretty clear pattern. It's almost like there's a blueprint for terror.
And that really brings up the big question, right? The one at the heart of literally every great horror story. What flips that switch? What does it take to wake up a restless spirit and turn a totally normal life into an absolute nightmare?
Well, that's exactly what we're going to figure out today. We've dug into some of the most chilling viral ghost stories out there to map out the anatomy of a haunting. We're going to follow the breadcrumbs from that very first unsettling whisper all the way to the final terrifying scream.
All right, let's get into it. So the first thing that really jumped out at us is that hauntings, they don't just happen out of the blue. They are not random at all. Nope. Every single one kicks off with a specific trigger, some kind of catalyst that wakes the dead.
And when we looked across all these stories, we found 4 main triggers that pop up again and again. First, you've got a traumatic place. Think about Sonia going back to Shergar, that creepy resort where her brother disappeared. Then there's the cursed object, like the super famous Okiku doll, which is supposed to have the spirit of a little girl inside. Sometimes, believe it or not, it's just a single careless word, like when Kritika makes a joke at a stranger's grave. Big mistake. And maybe the most powerful trigger of all, a buried secret, like Rizwan's betrayal that tragically led to his first wife Mega's suicide.
Okay, so once that trigger is pulled, the haunting doesn't just go from 0 to 100. No, it builds. It's kind of like a storm gathering on the horizon. It starts small, and then it just escalates. And it follows this really creepy, predictable path.
So it pretty much always kicks off with these psychological attacks. They're trying to mess with your head first, Like Kritika getting those terrifying silent phone calls, or the family with the Okiku doll all having the same nightmare about the doll trying to kill them. It's all about breaking you down mentally. Then, and only then, does it get physical. The Okiku doll's hair starts to grow, like for real, and eventually it even tries to strangle the dad. And James, who started as just a creepy voice, suddenly shows up in the flesh and attacks Kritika, trying to possess her.
And this quote, wow, this is what's so fascinating. It perfectly captures that shift in motive, right? This is the moment a ghost goes from being just a restless presence to a full-on malevolent entity with a goal. And Anamika's goal is terrifyingly simple. She wants to trap the living with her. Forever.
So this all builds up to the climax, the final showdown. The whispers are now screams. The mind games have turned into actual physical attacks. There's nowhere left to run. This is that moment where our heroes have to stop being victims, turn around, and finally fight back against whatever is destroying their lives. Which leads to the obvious question. How in the world do you fight a ghost? I mean, how do you fight something you can't even see? Something that breaks all the rules of reality? How do you finally get some peace?
Well, what's really interesting is that, based on these stories, there's no single answer. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. We found 4 totally different strategies for ending a haunting. Think of it like a ghost hunter's toolkit, where you have to use the right tool for the right spirit.
First up, you have investigation. This is all about playing detective, right? You have to figure out why the spirit is so angry in the first place. Take Sonia. She couldn't do anything about the ghost at Shergard until she dug into her own forgotten memories and realized her brother actually sacrificed himself to save her from Anamika, a teacher who was just heartbroken over losing her own kid. So yeah, understanding is step 1.
Next, you've got the much more direct approach, exorcism. This is a straight-up fight, a battle of wills. The spirit of James, for example, was just too possessive and stubborn. You couldn't reason with him, so they had to bring in 2 priests to perform a ritual at his grave, basically to just forcefully cut his spiritual ties to Kritika and kick him out for good.
But here's the thing. Sometimes fighting is the wrong move. That brings us to our third method, appeasement. Think about Anamika. Her rage came from losing her son. The whole haunting only stopped when her son, now all grown up, came back and confronted her spirit. He gave her that moment of motherly connection she desperately craved. He gave her what she wanted, and in doing so, he set everyone free.
So what happens if a spirit is just too powerful? You can't understand it, you can't banish it, and you can't appease it. Well, that leaves one last desperate option: containment. After 20 years of being terrorized, the family with the Okiku doll finally realized they couldn't get rid of it. The only thing they could do was give it to a temple, where it could be locked away and isolated. It's a force just too dangerous to ever let out again.
So there you have it. The pattern is pretty clear, right? A trigger, an escalation, and a final confrontation. But why do these stories stick with us so much? Why do they get under our skin? The truth is, the real scary part isn't just the ghosts. It's how these stories tap into our deepest, most human fears.
Because when you really look close, these stories are basically mirrors. They're not just about the dead coming back. They're about the things we leave behind. Our own mistakes, our grief, our guilt, all the stuff we thought we buried a long, long time ago.
And this is where it all comes together. Mega's ghost? That's not just a ghost. That's Rizwan's guilt literally come back to haunt him. Sonya's story? It's all about that terrifying idea that the past is never really dead. The Okiku doll is a walking, talking symbol of what happens when grief is never processed. And Kritika's whole ordeal? Well, that's a brutal reminder that even our smallest, most careless actions can have massive, terrifying consequences.
And that leaves us with one last, really unsettling thought. If every haunting starts with a restless spirit just waiting for the right trigger, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What ghosts from our past are just waiting for their trigger?